Hello, Maria, and hello, everyone at the Post-Natural Studies seminar. Thank you for watching the film. Of course, I wish I could be with you in Madrid, but here I am in front of my computer once again. Maria, you added a few comments or thoughts or kind of questions that we can address and maybe think about together. One of them was about the role of the institutions and the facilities and the kind of mediation that those facilities, such as museums, health resorts, seminar locations, even sometimes tourist shops, kind of dictate. So how do we look at these landscapes and environments through the prisms of the institution that becomes so central to how the film, I think, kind of functions? In a way, initially we arrived at these places with an idea that what we want to see, but the gate that we had to go through was the gate of this kind of institution, mostly a museum, both in the context of an art museum, but also in the historical context of a museum that offers all kinds of relics and a particular experience that is supposed to be quite immersive and all-consuming. That I think is important, that the film is kind of organized around a kind of a material culture of artifacts, of remnants, of little fragments that are left behind, beginning with the stone that is imbued with a certain power, the stone from Bad Gastein, saturated with radon. And that stone that is hidden in the landscape makes the kind of encounter between the body, our bodies, and the landscape as one that is based on the proximity to places and a proximity that is mediated through objects. So a stone, powder, a piece of art on a canvas, a gun maybe, or a camera fossilized and excavated from the ground, all of the objects taken from the ground now saturated with an energy that imbues them with a certain value. So this value, or this kind of, how do we isolate, how do we extract this value from the objects without extracting, the actual object itself from the location? What is that value is a question that we asked ourselves. And I think often we encountered that notion of the myth through that question, a certain value that is not visible, not one that we can see or touch, but one that is, really created through certain beliefs and certain energies that escape the human eye. That was something that I think tied everything together. So in its rich kind of material culture, there is this idea that is promoted that there's more than meets the eye. There's a myth. So, for instance, the first time we shot the Emma Kunz paintings, we actually shot them during an exhibition at the Serpentine in London. And we were granted access to the galleries, and we were confronted by certain restrictions that then basically forced us to film the art pieces in a very direct way, in a very specific way. The times, the lights, the conditions in which you document those objects really dictate a certain relationship, a certain proximity, and one that is actually, in this case, based on remaining, at a distance and kind of avoiding the very gesture of touching. But of course, once we went to the actual location in Switzerland, in Wurenlus, where the cave is, we we're suddenly confronted with this very haptic relationship with the environment, one that invites us to feel, to touch, and that creates a different myth. So, those objects are imbued with different values in different contexts, and this is something I think, as filmmakers, artists, and as basically people who question the mediating powers of objects, or this kind of mediations that are produced in a non-human language that is attached to certain objects, really interested us. So the institution is actually a kind of a prism. It's not just a organizing force that we should come to terms with and maybe even avoid, because obviously it's always entangled with certain powers and certain abuses of powers. It's also in many ways the kind of lens that we were interested to explore. This is mostly, I think, pronounced in how we approach the radon caves and the gold mine, and we are really interested there to listen to the scientists, the geologists, and of course those who are exploring the medical powers of radon, not only to understand what's going on in there, but also to imagine the world through them and maybe alter this kind of division that we usually create between the body and the landscape, and to think how the two are enmeshed or entangled in many different ways. There is one term that came up, which I think was articulated by one of the scientists or a historian in Bad Gastein, Austria. He was talking about the locus ominus. It's in Latin. It means the healing power of landscape. And it was brought up in the context of being in the landscape and feeling it on our skin, and looking at it and enjoying the kinds of well-being that is attached to being close to a particular landscape. This, I think, intrigued us both and kind of took us deeper into this film, and also led to the question of what happens once we capture this landscape as an image, as landscape actually, and we bring it with us, we take it with us, we tear it from its geography, from the contextual geography of a certain history, certain politics, and maybe we, with that, kind of question the very essence of what is mediating with images. So these sites are always kind of dictating our proximity and distance from a place, and I think are used in our case as a kind of prism to look at the environment. Hopefully there's some essence to take from what I'm offering here, just a few angles to think about. Thank you.